Hello, everyone, and thanks for giving us your time today for VR Download. I'm Ian Hamilton in New York, joined by David Heaney from London as we discuss the next steps in personal computing. We're wearing Quest 3 headsets today with last generation meta avatars. I've got hand tracking with built-in microphones. And I want to say thank you to our patrons for supporting the work we do over on UploadVR.com. We have one of the hardest working teams in journalism, and this is easily the hardest working team dedicated to covering the impact of virtual reality technology. I want to say thank you to our patrons, XR Developer News, Podum, the developer Smash Drums, Holonet, Mike Manzano, Richard Meller, Parmesan Qubits. I see John Birkbeck over there, Subcog, Davin, Arlen, a lot of regular viewers out there, Biggs. I don't know if there's any other regular members out there, but thank you all for tuning in. Thank you to our time travelers catching up throughout the show. And we got a lot of fun stuff to discuss today, David. What do we got?
Yeah, so I don't want to sort of invoke the VR download curse where when I say this should be a short show, it ends up being 3 or 4 hours. But we do have only 5 topics today. The first one is going to be very brief. We're just going to discuss Meta rebranding Quest Plus to Horizon Plus. There's no substantive changes there other than the changed name, for now at least. Next, we'll discuss Minecraft removing its official VR support, one of the first major games to support VR. And when you talk about mods, it's been there for over 10 years, right? The first mod to bring Minecraft into VR was 11 years ago for the original Oculus Rift DK1. So there are, of course, still mods. There are many clones in VR that basically copy Minecraft functionality, but the official support is now removed from the game. Then we will discuss the information's report about the next generation of Ray-Ban Meta glasses. So not the high-end smart glasses coming later this year, but next year, the next generation of the mainstream, more affordable Ray-Ban Meta glasses, which we've heard pretty much nothing about until now. So there's a little bit of information about what might be coming next year in those glasses. Then we will discuss Ian's article about what an Apple Vision Pro developer learned hiking 70 miles outdoors in headset. So this is a developer exploring using a pass-through style mixed reality VR headset to do outdoor large-scale experiences, and their learnings there. It's something that's obviously very early. These headsets aren't really designed for this at all, but they are theoretically capable of it, as this developer has found out and as Ian will discuss. And finally, we will talk about what I was teasing last week. That was what Ian was teasing last week. What I was teasing last week is a developer who implemented continuous scene meshing on Quest 3 in their game Lasertag, but they've also made it open source on GitHub. And so the first other developer has announced that they're going to use that same system, Hauntify, on Quest 3 this summer. We put an article up today about how later this summer they will release an update to use that. And so neither of these apps will require Meta's official room setup process, and we'll discuss all of the reasons why you wouldn't often want to use Meta's official room setup, the fundamental problems with it, and why this is so innovative, and why we expect that many Quest 3 mixed reality developers will adopt this system throughout this year, especially given that it's kind of free and open source. So yeah, those 5 topics are what we're going to discuss today.
Yeah, let's get right into that first one. I like our audience responding to your joke about us trying to keep this short, and then basically, like, I think there's a cabal of super fans out there that are now organizing a way to keep us in here for 3 hours plus, because that's how much of that they love hearing us talk every week. And sorry we're late today. I know there's, it's amazing to see all these names show up again and again, week after week after week. It's pretty clear that we're a staple of viewing in a lot of these people's weeks. So it means a lot to us that you set aside time for watching us. And we're sorry we had to be late. It's a hard journey here covering what's going on. And man, I've been struggling myself here, trying to just get content produced while in headset. It's not easy. All right, so what's our first subject again?
Yeah, so first I want to point out Brandon Jones' comment just after you kind of spoke there. He's very active in the WebXR community and is saying that he's listening from the dentist chair. Are you really a fan of VR if you're not learning about the next evolution in computing
Uh,
while someone pokes the inside of your skull with a pointy stick? Now,
Br-
that is dedication.
Brandon, my recommendation, I've done this, so I appreciate you doing that. Pull up the Walkabout Mini Golf playlist on iTunes and set that there. Now, the problem there is you got to decide whether you're doing that because you don't want to associate Walkabout Mini Golf with the pain inside your mouth right now. But on the other hand, you can mentally go to virtual reality a little bit easier if you pull up that particular playlist while the dentist is rooting around. So, how dedicated are we that I can actually meet Brandon in his play. I've done what Brandon's doing, right? Like I've been there, right? So I appreciate you. You appreciate me. We are in the same boat. We've both done the same things, and good luck to you on the dentist chair today. So thanks for listening. All right, what was that first subject again?
Yeah, I've got to be honest. I don't think I've even thought about the idea of listening to stuff in the dentist chair. I've never even thought of that as a possibility. But
I can't do that on my smart. No, I can do it on my smart glasses. I just can't download the photos that I take with my smart glasses because they're AI glasses now. Thanks, Boz.
oh no, not this one again. We'll leave that for another week. So our first topic here, Meta has rebranded its game subscription service from Meta Quest Plus to Meta Horizon Plus. Now, like I said, we're only going to discuss this briefly, probably because this is not a change in functionality. There's no change in service. This is the same old Quest Plus, but it's now called Horizon Plus. If you don't know what on earth Quest Plus is, it is a subscription service, $8 a month, that gives you access to a rotating games catalog as well as 2 redeemable games each month. So while you stay subscribed, you always have access to that games catalog, even though some games are swapped in and some are swapped out. And when you redeem the games each month, 2 each month that Meta selects, they are in your catalog until you stop subscribing. If you resubscribe, you get access to everything you previously redeemed as well as that same games catalog. So it's pretty similar to what you get on the likes of Xbox Game Pass or the PlayStation Plus premium subscription, whatever they're calling it now. They have multiple tiers. And, as I've said before, there isn't much to discuss here about the name change except for one thing, that this is likely because when they launch other Horizon OS headsets from other companies like Asus and Lenovo, they want all of these platform services to be available on those headsets. So Quest remains the name for their first party hardware, Quest 3, Quest 3S, reportedly Quest 4 and 4S next year. We'll see if that happens, whether they keep that kind of branding. But the Horizon name is what is now used for all of the software layers. So if you're using the web browser, you're using the Horizon OS web browser, right? If you're using the store, it's Horizon Store, etc., etc. The software system is Horizon. Hence, this was the last usage of the MetaQuest name in a software sense that isn't just the hardware. So we predicted this would happen, right? On this show, we said, I'm sure they'll rename this at some point. And in general, whatever it's called, Quest Plus or Horizon Plus, it's a really good deal, actually. I'm genuinely surprised how people don't talk enough about how this is a good deal. For the games catalog specifically, right? For $8 a month, you get Demeo, Ghosts of Tabor, Onward, The Climb 2, Asgard's Wrath 2, right? A 60R AAA RPG, Red Matter, Job Simulator, 11 Table Tennis, Cubism, Puzzling Places, and Walkabout Mini Golf, Ian's favorite. All of those games for $8 is pretty crazy, right? I understand that some people have this fundamental opposition to subscriptions and you want to own stuff, and that's totally fine, and I respect that. But if you're someone who's got this headset on a budget, right, you picked up the Quest 3S for $270 on a sale or something, and you don't have the funds to go and purchase all of these games and own them, $8 for access, I think, is pretty good. It sounds like I'm advertising this. I'm not. I'm just saying that if you're on a budget, it is a great way to get access to some of the best VR games from the past 5-10 years.
We've got a fan from Brazil out there. Thank you for tuning in all the way across the world. We thank you for watching us and for trusting us. We're doing our best here. So Horizon Plus, I'm going to paint this picture for you. A lot of people in our comments are going, where are the third party headsets? I've been struggling with this for a while because I haven't imagined third parties wanting to compete with Quests. Like it's been an issue where the Quest is just so low cost. Why would anyone go and buy more of a different brand headset? It feels like the branding here and like the branding here clears the way for something like an Xbox VR headset powered by Horizon OS, featuring apps like WhatsApp as their messaging platform. And then you've got the end game there for Meta, right? You've got an operating system that you control, a service that you can, a monthly subscription service that you can roll out to your users. You've got the biggest consumer gaming company, one of the biggest consumer gaming companies in the world right now, running your operating system on their hardware. And don't we all arrive at the end we all kind of wanted to be at the beginning with? If you remember, there was like an Xbox console that got pitched with VR for the first week, and then all the references to VR got removed from like their website very, very quickly at announced. So like it was clearly at very late stage that they were planning to include VR in some level on an Xbox. And then poof, it disappeared. And we'll cover some of this in the rest of the show. But I wanted to give that context that like a lot of people talk about those third-party headsets. You could have whatever name you want for a VR headset powered by Horizon OS. And that's kind of what Meta has opened up here for people.
Yeah, so a couple of things to kind of address there. When it comes to the third-party headsets competing with Quest, the idea is that they don't directly compete with Quest, right? This was said even when 13 months ago, the Asus and Lenovo headsets were announced. So it has now been 13 months since Meta said that Asus and Lenovo are working on Horizon OS headsets. I saw a comment here asking, like, have we heard anything since then from either Asus or Lenovo? From Asus, no, except there was a potential leak from Luna, VR enthusiast Luna, who recently wrote an article on UploadVR.com about Horizon OS that you should go and read, that claimed that Asus will be first, and that was earlier this year, I think, if I have my times correct. When it comes to Lenovo, though, at their yearly tech conference in October, they confirmed that they were working on multiple Horizon OS headsets. So that's October in terms of recency. But yet, even when these were announced, Meta was very clear that they actually aren't going to directly compete with Quest. What they're going to do is be lower volume niche headsets that address specific niche market appeals, right? So Quest and 3 and 3S stay there at $300, $400, $500. I would expect that these headsets are going to be on the order of $800, $1,000, $1,200, $1,500, maybe even $2,000. And the indication we got is that Asus is looking to target gamers. So you might see things like better displays, maybe mini LED or even micro OLED potentially, as well as maybe a battery in the rear for better balance, things like that. Whereas Lenovo are reportedly targeting productivity. So I would almost certainly expect high density micro OLED there, as well as maybe even something like an external battery. We don't know. These are just potential avenues you could go down. But the Quests are the jack of all trades, right? They are designed to be low cost, make a balanced design trade for appealing for gaming, fitness, productivity. But if you do want to go down a specific design route, right? If you want to make a headset that is really designed for virtual screens, you're going to need a lot higher resolution than Quest 3. You may want an external battery. If you want a headset that is optimized for room scale gaming, you may want to put the battery in the rear. You may want to have a even bigger battery. You may want to have wider field of view. There's all kinds of trades. And of course, eye tracking as well. Any of these headsets could introduce this before we see it in Quest 4. But when it comes to the Xbox headset, the goal there, that what we saw was that it was essentially going to be a Xbox edition of Quest 3, right? Literally a Quest 3 that's black with a green facial interface and has a Quest 3 gamepad in the box. The fact that we haven't seen that 13 months later suggests to me that that's not happening. But I don't think that was ever essential to the strategy here, right? And I'm skeptical of ever seeing an Xbox headset with Horizon OS, simply because Microsoft, if it was truly an Xbox venture, would want to be the platform holder there, right? With an Xbox Store and Xbox services and Microsoft Edge and Copilot and things like that.
Yeah, so we've got our other subjects to discuss that will all end up relating back to this. I particularly want to talk about cubic layer and volumes as soon as I can, because I think it relates, especially when we start considering what is the timeline for Android XR's delivery of its first headset. We heard, I don't know if it was a year and a half ago now, where Andrew Bosworth, the CTO of Meta, sort of publicly called out some reports out there that seemed sourced to Google about the splitting of their platforms. Basically, you have the Horizon OS based on the shell of Android underneath, and you've got to constantly maintain that connection to Android in order to have classic Android apps playable on your system. And there's a lot of people out there that are sort of using SideQuest or using ADB commands in some other way in order to load up these flat panel apps that actually allow them to use their headsets, their Meta headsets, for extended periods of time because they're not disconnected from all that stuff that's on their Google Android phone sitting right there. So this is all related, right? Like Google's going to be on the same path here as Horizon OS in the next year, trying to onboard potentially millions of people with a new version of operating system. And how close Horizon OS and Android XR stay in functionality is going to be kind of the area to watch. Like, and I appreciated Gigo didn't sort of asking or putting you to task, like, how do these headsets not compete with one another unless Meta stops shipping Quests? And that's kind of what's in the back of my head, that like, if I were making hardware based on Horizon OS, I would more or less say to Meta, I refuse to compete with you.
Yeah, so a few things there, right? Firstly, yes, this is going to strongly compete with Android XR, and Meta and Google are likely vying for the same partners, with the one caveat that Google has promised Samsung exclusivity, right? They've said this publicly. Samsung is the exclusive first partner. So the Samsung headset has to come out first, and then Android XR can come to other headsets, unless that deal falls apart. But I can't, like, Samsung's headset is being shown, it's out there, it's coming, right? That's unlikely to fall apart. So Meta kind of has until then to launch these first headsets. And then from then, it depends, what do consumers adopt over the next few years, right? What do they choose? We did see in the past, with mobile operating systems, companies like Nokia used to build Windows phones and then they built Android phones, right? So we don't know which of these companies will stick with each partner in the long term, right? There is a possible path in 5 years where Samsung is making Horizon OS headsets. There's also a path in 5 years where ASUS and Lenovo are making Android XR headsets, right? We don't know what the future holds. On the question of like, how do these headsets compete? I think I answered that, right? Like they're in a different price category, right? In the same way that Google today makes Pixel phones and Samsung makes Samsung phones running Google's operating system, right? Google didn't stop making Pixel phones. Google makes a Pixel watch, and Samsung adopted Wear OS, Google's operating system. It used to have Tizen, it now uses Google's. Google makes hardware and the software. It's not an unheard of thing in the tech industry, right? Amazon makes Fire TVs. Other companies load Fire OS on their TV. Again, I do think Quest is the low cost jack of all trades, but there is a market higher end. And if you want to make money on the hardware, you have to do that, right? Like Meta's not making money on the hardware. Quest 3S is probably sold at roughly cost. Quest 3 maybe has a tiny margin, but nothing meaningful to be a hardware business. If you want to make money on headsets, you have to have a margin, right? So you need to have a higher price and appeal to a kind of more wide audience. It's the same reason why there aren't third-party PlayStations and third-party Xboxes, right? But if you imagine a world where the design trade for consoles was different and you could kind of trade off against different things, then you might, right? Like they aren't wearable. You don't have all of these trade-offs of where do you put the battery, what kind of screens do you use, what do you optimize for, that you do when it comes to things like VR headsets.
So Jack out there saying I wouldn't release a headset with today's chipsets when 3 and 3S is already entrenched on it, as well as economy woes. I think that's interesting. The thing, the wrench I want to throw in here that we haven't talked about is eye tracking. I believe Horizon OS needs to integrate eye tracking as a fundamental piece of its input layer in order to match what Android XR and what Vision OS has as its base level service. Over the last year, it's taken me a while to learn how to use the eye targeting inside Vision Pro. It's taken a lot to get used to, and it's also taken developers a lot to get used to exactly how that works. Now's not the time, in my opinion, to throw out a whole bunch of headsets that don't have eye tracking Or if you do throw them out with eye tracking, don't throw them out there into the wild without really robust development tools to build for those eye tracking apps. And like, this is the point at which Google and Android, or, Android and Meta might be forking how they deal with this stuff. So I don't know. It would just, eye tracking is going to be really interesting to watch over the next year.
No, you're absolutely right. It would be, I think any company would be gravely mistaken to release a headset without eye tracking unless it's something really low cost, like $500 or below, anytime in the next year or beyond, right? It's just so fundamental to the experience, both for going high resolution with foveated rendering and for the gaze and pinch interaction system that is just sublime on Apple Vision Pro. I would strongly suspect that the Asus and Lenovo headsets will use eye tracking, but it does open up interesting questions like, is it really going to be the case, as you say, that they introduce that in a non-Quest headset first, right? Did the third parties introduce this? And that brings up what the other commenter brought up, which is the number one concern I've seen about Horizon OS headsets from third parties is this going to have the XR2 Plus Gen 2, which is just a souped up version of Quest 3's chip? And then a year later, will we see Quest 4 launch with a proper Gen 3 chip that blows it away, right? Maybe, but that would be kind of the Quest Pro mistake over again. A possibility here is that like we're all assuming that these first headsets are coming in 2025. They could come in 2026 alongside Quest 4. You could essentially have an entire lineup arrive in 2026 where you have a Quest 4S at the lowest cost, Quest 4 at $500 or $600, and then a spectrum of headsets that are using the same chip or a plus version of it from other companies like Asus or Lenovo. The thing that some people say were, oh, these were announced a year ago, where are they? This is hardware. Like, other than startups that often skip steps and end up, causing serious issues because of that, hardware takes years to develop. The Quest 3 and Quest 3S would have been designed 3 or 4 years before they went out into production in the world. This is very common for hardware timelines. It would be more surprising if you did see a headset arrive a year after the partnerships were announced than anything. So it's entirely possible that the answer to this question is these will all launch alongside Quest 4 using the same chip. And the last thing I just want to say on that chip thing is, like, this applies to the Samsung headset as well. No one ever points this out, that the Samsung headset, last we heard from Qualcomm, is using the XR2 Plus Gen 2, which is going to be having the same issue of potentially being outdated by Quest 4 a year after.
Yeah, fascinating. I'm still ready for a Rift 2. I still think Meta could go there if they really wanted to. I think we don't really need Quest. We just need them to show that they care about the enthusiasts again, and go with OLED and go for a Rift 2, maybe with eye tracking. But I like the commenter from Big saying, there's multiple people in these comments that are suggesting that the end of Quest is here or in the near future, and it feels like you don't see enough smoke here to think that that's possible. But I don't see other people wanting to compete with those low cost Quests. Like, it's
like a Lamborghini doesn't compete with a Toyota Camry, right? Like, or maybe a better example is like, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think of a good analogy, but there are lots of cases in which there are low cost, low margin products that are offered for a wide range of people, and then high end, high margin products that are, for enthusiasts wanting something more, right? Like the Tesla Model 3 versus the Tesla Model S, or the iPad versus the iPad Pro. There's lots of cases like this. You can have, essentially, the argument you'd be making there is no room above $500 for a headset, right? Like, that's the only argument you can make if you think there's no competition for Quest. And that's obviously false, right? Like, to get $500, Quests have to make serious compromises. The battery has to be in the front. That's the lowest cost way to do it. They have to use LCD displays. That's the only practical cost at this price. For this generation, they had to cut out eye tracking. For next generation, there'll be other features they have to cut out. Like, fundamentally, things have a cost, and there will always be something you can offer more. There are, the contradiction here is that there are enthusiasts in the comments who are like, oh, of course I would pay for a Quest 3 Plus that had, eye tracking and mini LED with local dimming or micro OLED. Well, that's what these headsets would be, right? They would essentially be like a either Quest 3 Plus or Quest 4 Plus going off in a different direction. By definition, it doesn't compete in the same way that higher end products don't compete with lower end, right?
Yeah, what do we got next on this schedule? I want to get moving on to the
Sure.
next things because they're all going to end up relating. And I like the comment here joking with us that, one name change and now UploadVR is talking about the next 2 years of headset designs. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fair, but it's also, I think, fair for us to discuss this because Meta you'll see these occasional reports from Bloomberg or I don't know, a couple other outlets will get their hands on, I don't know, talking to an engineer or an executive and getting permission to break a bit of news early, 6 months early from one of these sources and say this company is working on this company is working on this. But what we really are talking about here is the highest levels of these teams trying to figure out what their strategy is for a decade out, maybe 2 decades out. Like you're not. I'm remembering a conversation I had with Mark Zuckerberg in 2022 about how he thinks the wristband will be bigger for AR than for VR headsets. And it's wild to imagine that like he's already thinking past the initial use case for these bands being used on headsets like we're discussing up here. He's already in like let's go a decade out from there to these bands being the way you're able to text message your friends without having to speak to the open air and give away everything you're saying in your message. All right, what's next, David?
Yeah, so a few comments I want to bring up here. That was a very lively discussion here. People really do have a lot of opinions. I was struggling for an analogy there, and Lax Lifters has handed me McDonald's versus Michelin star restaurants. Yeah, exactly. It's like saying you want to start a restaurant, but there's a McDonald's down the street. How can you compete with McDonald's? Yeah, they're different things. Another comment here. From Jorg that I want to address, where they say that eye tracked foveated rendering will not matter unless it's a dead simple checkbox feature of the platform. Developers will not invest a lot of time in DFR when most headsets still don't support it. So on Quest, it will be, right? Already on Quest Pro, it essentially is if you're using Unity or Unreal, but obviously nobody bought a Quest Pro, so that wasn't something developers bothered to do. But this will be because you have this kind of consoleized approach on Quest and you're not like targeting a bunch of different graphics cards and drivers and headsets. If Meta introduces eye tracking in Quest 4, it will be incredibly simple for Unity and Unreal developers to introduce dynamic foveated rendering, just like it is for any developer that's using a Reality Kit on Vision Pro. Right, pretty much everything there. It's a one-click thing. It's more complex when you get into engine integrations, but on PlayStation VR 2 as well, right? It's very simple if developers are using the right render pipeline on Unity. And I just need to stress, like, you don't get to go much higher resolution than Quest 3 without eye track foveated rendering. It is essential for high resolution. Like, I've tried headsets that even on PC try to go to 4K per eye without eye tracking, and you just run into the fact that it's an extraordinary number of pixels, and it's so silly and wasteful to then try to render them all raw. Yeah, eye tracked foveated rendering is fundamentally essential to the future of this technology.
Quentin, I hate to say it, but the more I see Zuckerberg on random podcasts, the lower my confidence in Meta gets. And we don't have Mark Zuckerberg on this podcast, even though we'd love to have him on. We'd love to have Andrew Bosworth on this podcast and throw real hard, serious questions at these people about the work that they've done and the work that they plan to do in the future. And we're not going to do it a certain way. We're not going to give them a list of pre-approved questions that we're going to cover. We're going to see where the conversation goes if they ever joined us. I don't see them ever wanting to join a podcast in that sort of scenario. So no fault on them for not wanting to join us if that's the way we're going to do things. But that's the kind of podcast I want to run, and that's the kind of discussion I would want to have if those people came to join us. But to that point of just random podcasts, this is ultimately the issue. Facebook became used by every man, woman, and child on the planet, or rather, like what 1/3 of them. It was like 2 billion people or 1 billion people. They're always quoting the number during the earnings reports of just how many people on a planet have gone and signed up for one of those accounts. right now, Meta is in the middle of trying to get that to happen with Meta accounts, right? And they're trying to figure out what is the use case with which we can get people to sign up for Meta accounts and then attach everything else they do in their world to those Meta accounts. Your WhatsApp, your Facebook, your Messenger, your VR activity, your AI activity. They want everything to eventually get attached to that. Your verification on Meta, you got to go pay for verification that you're a real person on Facebook now, right? Because they've got all the AIs that they're seeding into the market, right? It's just there's a long evolution here, and the only way Meta knows how to do business is like we don't act just ads, right? Like that's the only way they know how to make business is let's make a space for ads to appear, and all other priorities go secondary to that. And it's all about these Meta accounts, right? Signing us up for Meta accounts. And so when I see them going on those random podcasts, I see them trying to like make fetch happen. Like that's what it looks like to me. They're trying to make fetch happen when what they really need to be doing is creating incredible virtual worlds for us to visit on better hardware.
Yeah, so I obviously listen to all of the Meta executive appearances on podcasts, and I would recommend if you're in our audience and you're interested in the kind of thing I expect you are, don't listen to the Mark Zuckerberg podcasts. They're somewhat illuminating, but a lot of it is so macro that it's not going to be relevant. Listen to some of the Andrew Bosworth interviews, though. I would recommend, just go into the YouTube search bar and type Andrew Bosworth interview. There are a couple he's done over the past 2 months that get much more down in the depths and talks about, AR and VR in a sense. And, for example, there was a recent one where he's talking about like this North Star vision of, sometime in the early 2030s, being able to pop on a lightweight VR headset and appear with your friend courtside at a, high resolution 3D immersive stream. And, there's all kinds of discussions around that and how they're thinking about AR and VR. And Bosworth does sometimes get very specific, right? Last year, we reported on one of his interviews where he was literally asked to describe the specs of a Quest headset in the early 2030s. And he kind of went into the depths on that. So it's still not the kind of depths where, you might get from Michael Abrash or John Carmack back in the day, right? And I see some commenters bringing up that. But if you are looking for the kind of depth I think you are, it's Andrew Bosworth interviews you want to look for, not Mark Zuckerberg ones at the moment. And yes, I see LL pointing out the A16 Boz interview and Reid Hoffman ones were great. Agreed, yes, those two interviews are great, as well as Jack B saying the Boz and James Cameron interview in VR were great. Yes, you can actually go on MetaQuest TV and watch in immersive video James Cameron and Andrew Bosworth talking, and that's again getting down into the deeps. They're talking about like the specifics of 3D cinema technology and headsets and things like that. And yeah, I think that's where you kind of want to go to there. One last thing I want to say, because we never really got to this, you kind of asked me it, and I don't think we got to it, was on the idea of will Horizon OS headsets lead to Meta no longer making Quest headsets? One background here I want to add is that there have been rumors about Meta pulling out of first-party headset hardware for as long as Meta has been in first-party headset hardware, right? This has been a thing for a very long time. Between Quest 2 and Quest Pro, there were a bunch of rumors that Quest 3 would never happen. Now we see this, people suggesting, well, maybe Quest 4 won't happen. I think it's far, far too early for anything like that. You will want to see a Quest mainline headset that has eye tracking, for example, at a baseline. And you would want to see a Quest headset that has codec avatars and things like that. Fundamentally, while I could definitely see one day in the far future, 10, 15 years from now, maybe if Meta Horizon OS does win out over Android XR, and that's a massive if to be clear, that they stop making first party hardware, but it seems unlikely, even as like a North Star thing, right? Google makes Pixel phones. As I said earlier, Amazon makes Fire TVs. And the fundamental problem of margins is always going to be there, right? If you're making third party hardware for a platform you don't own, you have to make a hardware margin. You have to make a profit on the hardware. And if you aren't, you can sell it at cost, right? It's why Nintendo makes Switch hardware. It's why Sony makes PlayStation hardware. It's why Microsoft makes Xbox. It's why Valve makes Steam Deck, and it's why Steam machines field, right? All of these things have the same kind of relation to it. And yeah, I I just think this is going to be one of those things where if Quest 4 does come out next year, we'll get rumors a few years later that Quest 5 won't come out, and over and over. And it's possible I'm being too dismissive, but as recently as January, we had Andrew Bosworth, the CTO of Meta, talking about the next Quest and the Quest after that in response to something about like, what are you thinking about XYZ hardware? The next Quest and the Quest after that. So unless between January and now they've decided to kill off all the Quests, I think this is a little bit premature.
Mm, I could see them. There was a comment on reference designs. I could see them still designing those devices and then just handing them to partners and saying, "Run with this." So the Quests still get, they still get designed and made, but they just end up as the base, the Qualcomm reference design of Horizon OS going forward. I there was there was a comment from where was it? Um, is it Biggs who said, oh no, it was Quentin. The real question is how does the new Pope feel about VR? I love it. It's an off topic. It's how my brain works. So I got to call that out, of just, think about all the tech dude bros out there talking to their AI bots and then, thinking that they've talked to God because the AI bot is the first one to correct them on information in 5 to 10 years. Like that's their engineer brain, and that's how isolated they've been inside their little cubicle typing away at their computer. And now the AI god is telling them they're wrong, and now they're arguing with the AI god, and the AI god is teaching them that they're wrong. I am very curious how religions respond to the idea that, like, you remember that Google engineer that felt like he had seen a sentient life form inside the AI, right? Like we're on the course of more people experiencing that year after year after year. And how does existing religion tell those people that, that's not God you're talking to inside the computer? I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to touch that one, but I think it is an interesting thing to bring up. I'm not dismissing it in any way. That certainly will be a trend that we see. It's already a thing, right? There are people within Silicon Valley who do take this as a religious venture. And yeah, so let's talk about the next topic here. We spent a lot of time on that, but it was great to have that discussion. I think it's really interesting to say what is the future of the Horizon OS platform. This one is going to be a gaming topic. And again, as I've said before, now that we don't do regular game casts, we will occasionally talk about games topics here, but it's not about, game design and kind of functionality and multiplayer. We're talking about it in an industry sense and how it relates to some of these big moves between these companies. So the news here is that Minecraft no longer officially supports VR. I saw some comments earlier in the show asking about, like, did it ever support VR? And yeah, it did. So if you aren't familiar, there are two versions of Minecraft. There is Bedrock Edition and there is Java Edition. Java Edition is the original one, programmed by Notch in, believe it or not, Java, and it runs on Windows, Mac, and Linux and has multiplayer between them. Bedrock is the newer version that is written in C++, and it's available on everything: Windows, Android, iOS, iPadOS, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation, Xbox, Amazon Fire, TVs and tablets, I think, and even Chromebooks, Chrome OS, right? It's pretty much anything. And that's, for me, the magic of Minecraft Bedrock is that you can play with a friend who has any device of any kind, right? Whatever device they have that they play games on, you can play multiplayer with them. And, there's literally been, years ago, parties I've been at where people are able to pull out whatever device they have with them and just so many different devices. Literally, you're talking about cross-platform multiplayer between like 5 different operating systems. And that's the only OS that person had. And that's magic, right? Because you can't play multiplayer with them otherwise. So that's why the removal of the official VR support that was in this Bedrock edition is so significant for me. And so that did have VR support on PC. So you could use PC VR through the Quest Link app, the Rift Store, whatever you want to call it. And it also had support for the original PlayStation VR. And those are both gone now. It never supported the PlayStation VR 2, and it never supported standalone Oculus Go, Oculus Quest, or anything like that. So that never was a thing in the first place. Now, of course, we should note that you can still play the Java edition modded. On PC VR, there is Vivecraft, which has been around for a very, very long time. On Quest standalone, someone has even ported the Java edition and Vivecraft to Quest standalone, completely standalone through sideloading. And that's called Questcraft, and you do need to own the game officially. It's not a way to get it free, but it's similar to the way you have to own certain games to play them on Quest ports. So this game has a real significant history for VR. As I said earlier in the show, one of the first mods to bring VR to a proper full game was Minecraft in 2014, early 2014, before even the Oculus Rift DK2. This mod was for the DK1. Fun fact, back then, I was actually playing around with DIY headsets. I built a little headset and I used Minecraft, which is what this mod was called, to play Minecraft on it. It was the one game I actually bothered playing on it. This was not a serious headset. It was just a DIY project, to be clear. And so that's the first major game that ever had support for VR through this mod. Then we got official support 2 years later, right? The Samsung Gear VR smartphone system powered by Oculus got support for it. And it also came to the Oculus Rift on PC a few months later. In 2017, a year after that, it came to Windows MR headsets, which are now dead anyway. And then in 2020, it came to the original PlayStation VR. And one thing that was really unique about Minecraft VR, that I'm sure Ian is a huge fan of because you bring it up often about recent games as a great design choice, is that you can switch between flat screen and immersive VR at any time without any interruption. So the implementation here was before pass-through. It's not mixed reality. It's you go into a pre-made Minecraft house and play it on like a wooden framed TV, and it's so meta, right? You're in a Minecraft house playing Minecraft on a flat screen, and then at any time you pop into VR or pop out, and that's something that is becoming a more popular design choice. Is something Ian is a huge advocate of on modern platforms, and so Minecraft had that years and years ago. So they stopped updating the Gear VR version in 2020. Now the PC VR and PlayStation VR version is dead. Again, there are mods and there are clones, right? On PlayStation VR 2, there's a Minecraft clone there. On Quest Horizon Store, I think there's like 3 or 4, or maybe even 5. But if you want to play the multiplayer Bedrock, that is no longer something that you can do. You're going to be confined to the Java edition, which is only kind of, Mac, Linux, Windows, and Quest unofficially.
It was. I'll get to this when I talk about cubic layer here in a little bit, but I noticed JavaScript was not allowed, or it's really a pain to get JavaScript running in Vision OS. Because of what I've been messing around with there. But I'm seeing people talk about Gear VR and Oculus Go and how those machines were dedicated Minecraft machines for them. And you're going back to 14 or 2015 to 2020, that period, right? And what happened between the period of 2020 to 2025? We had the rise of the Quest ecosystem, and now we're seeing potentially the decline of the Quest ecosystem to be replaced by something new. And David's functionality that he just described there, I think, was probably hand coded personally by John Carmack. Either that or some of the other code that was in Minecraft was personally coded by John Carmack trying to get Minecraft running on these systems. And as I recall, there was an Oculus Connect where he basically said he was going to cry. I think he threatened that he was going to cry if this didn't come to pass. If all of his hard work to prove that Minecraft was a thing wouldn't come to pass. And as I recall, it required a personal email from Mark Zuckerberg to the CEO of Microsoft in order to assure the leadership at these organizations that they're going to be able to work together. And arguably, in retrospect, that it didn't go great for Minecraft. Like it wasn't that experience that Carmack worked on was interesting, but it almost immediately started like getting deprecated and outdated on the operating system it was running on.
Yeah, so it's absolutely true. Carmack partially developed the VR support in Minecraft, as you say. Getting it actually shipped did take this, personal communication between CEOs, and I think the problem was it was just a little bit too early. Right? People are talking about playing this on Oculus Go. It was never actually officially on Oculus Go. You had to extract the APK off a Gear VR and then bring it onto Oculus Go. And then, people obviously have played it on Quest. I see some people saying they literally just copied the APK, but you don't get positional tracking. Some people have modded it. Of course, you don't get multiplayer. And there's all sorts of other issues. There's not track controllers. If this had have happened just a few years later, it would have been much more significant because it would still be on the current software platform, right? And John Carmack repeatedly over the years, publicly and privately, protested for Minecraft to come to Quest, and he even developed it. Right, he had it working on Quest. I had it working in 6DoF on Quest. John Carmack says here, and people are asking why hasn't Meta got this done? Well, Meta wants to. Here's the CTO of Meta saying, we have tried to make the case to our friends at Microsoft many times. Tell any friend you have at Microsoft. This is less than a year ago. Andrew Bosworth saying, if Microsoft wants to do it, we'll do it, is what he's saying here, right? Like, the problem is that it just isn't a priority for Microsoft right now. There is a partnership between, I think you're muted if you're trying to talk. There is a partnership between Meta and Microsoft, and we do have to note that, right? It has brought Xbox Cloud gaming, so you can play flat screen games. Notably, Minecraft isn't on xCloud. It has brought that seamless Windows 11 integration for remote desktop, which is currently experimental on Quest, and we expect in the next few months will be stable. But it hasn't managed to bring any of the major Xbox or Minecraft game IPs to VR, right? We haven't seen that happen. There is no, we didn't get Morrowind VR or Oblivion VR, right? We're not going to get, maybe Starfield VR or something like that. None of these titles have come across. You mentioned earlier in the show, Ian, Microsoft did for the Xbox One Series X. God, the Xbox names are hard to remember. That the high-end version of the Xbox One, the PS4 Pro equivalent on the Xbox side, they actually announced it as having VR support, but it never happened. And there hasn't been a transfer here. So far, this partnership has been limited to, Xbox cloud gaming, seamless Windows 11 integration. There's been some other minor things, right? They brought like Microsoft Word web apps, but they're basically just shortcuts to the web browser that you can make yourself now. They also had like this weird Teams thing where you can like appear as an avatar in Teams, but nothing substantial, bar that Windows 11 integration and Xbox Cloud Gaming. But, we have it right here, right? Meta wants to do it. And there's so many cases like this, actually. And this is something we really need to highlight where people are like, why hasn't Meta done this, right? Like someone asked Andrew Bosworth a year or so ago, why haven't you got Discord on? And, why haven't you got Disney Plus? And his response was, like, dude, I would love to get Discord on our platform with Disney Plus. Go tell Discord and Disney to do it, and we'll do it, right? Like, often people are asking the wrong people. Meta is not the one with a position of power here. These companies choose what platform to put it on. Netflix on Vision Pro, right? Netflix hasn't made a Vision Pro app. Apple would probably love them to make a Vision Pro app, but it's not Apple you need to ask in that case. It's Netflix.
So Quentin and a couple others wondering about the money situation here. There was the comment, from Quentin saying, if Sony can pay Capcom to bring Resident Evil to VR, Meta can pay Microsoft to bring Minecraft to Quest. It's good in theory. What you're saying is logically, like, I get it. But the difference there is Resident Evil is a single player game, and Minecraft is perhaps top 3 in the world when it comes to multiplayer games. So it goes like Roblox, Fortnite, and Minecraft. Those are the 3 giants. And when you go and support a platform, I heard this years ago, and I wonder if it's still the case. If you take the Netflix Wii disc and stick it into a Wii, there's, at least as of a couple years ago, that you would still get functional Netflix out of your Wii and putting a Netflix disc into the Wii and getting. That's how long Netflix plans to support platforms when it does. Like, so when you say to Netflix, I want you to support my device, you're asking them to support for 20 plus years. You like, that company is not going to do that lightheartedly. They're going to think very robustly about how do we support this over the long term. Same thing is going to be true of Minecraft at this point. And if you think of how poorly things went last time with personal messages having to be exchanged between the CEOs, you can imagine them being gun shy, and specifically on this multiplayer situation.
Yeah, exactly. It's multiplayer. It's on so many platforms, right? I listed how many platforms it's on, and even then, that's a challenge for them. And the scale is just so different, right? Minecraft is played by hundreds of millions, if not billions, of people. And so the VR users that would be added are a much smaller percentage than what Capcom would add, right? You have a kind of big chunk. I think it was maybe like 3 to 5% of Resident Evil 4 remake and Resident Evil 8 players on PlayStation were in VR, right? That's still not massive, right? But it is an extra 1 in 20. The other thing is, I've heard that the people who are decision makers at Capcom are just huge VR fans. That's why we've seen, all of these Resident Evil games recently come. That's why we saw Resident Evil 7. I think they are genuinely just big fans of VR. And sometimes that is what matters here. It does matter if an executive just happens to be a big fan of VR or not be. Some of these are just personal human decisions that aren't, being counter thoughts. When it comes to Microsoft, I don't think Satya Nadella is a massive VR fan. I don't think he makes decisions like that at all, even if he is. I think he very much so is someone who thinks in numbers and kind of, hard spreadsheets. And you probably would be too if you're running a $1 trillion company, right? Like these are the kind of things that he has to think about, especially in the fact that he's not Mark Zuckerberg. He doesn't have a controlling stake in Microsoft. He's not Bill Gates. He is, a appointed CEO who's responsible to the board and the shareholders in a very, very real sense. And unfortunately, that is just the reality. So yes, maybe Meta could find a big enough figure to throw at Minecraft. Maybe that is possible. But again, it would still be such a hard sell for all the reasons you've just mentioned, Ian, that, as you say, it needs to work.
I know what the price is, David.
Sorry, I'm just saying every feature they ever introduce in Minecraft for, as you say, the next 20 years, they then need to make sure it works in VR. And that's a big ask. But sorry, continue.
So here's my question, and I don't think I will get an answer to this question from an executive at Meta or an executive at Microsoft. I think I'm going to have to rely on engineers or, thoughtful leakers inside the organizations to find out if this is true. But it's just my theory. I think the price of putting Minecraft on a Horizon OS headset is a data sharing agreement of some kind. And the question is, what kind of data sharing agreement would Meta agree to with Microsoft in order to bring Minecraft to Horizon OS headsets? I've been hinting here that I think Skype probably died in order for WhatsApp to live. I would like to know if there is any kind of a data. If that comes to pass, I would like to know if there's a data sharing agreement between WhatsApp messages, getting decoded by an AI, and then tokens being sent off to their relative parent companies, whatever. It's just a data sharing agreement of some kind is what I would imagine is the price of bringing Minecraft to Meta headsets. So we'll see if that's right or wrong over the long term. And you can reach me at ian@uploadvr.com if you have anything interesting to share.
Yeah, well, we'll certainly have to see how that goes. Meta and Microsoft's partnership is kind of confusing. It's so strong in some ways and so weak in other ways. It isn't just an XR, right? They have a official a partnership in XR that is kind of seen Microsoft, deprecate Windows MR and say that, Horizon OS Quest is our XR platform with Meta in a sense, through Windows 11 integration, for example. They also plan to have that like volumetric API where when you're using that Windows 11 integration for remote desktop, they want to allow like 3D objects to pop out of the screens. We have to see that later this year. I do want to say that though it would be such a boost for the Quest platform to get Minecraft, like just putting aside the practicalities and partnerships, it would be huge, right? Minecraft is one of the biggest games in the world. It is beloved for a good reason. It's the timing is right where the movie's just come out. The amazing part is how cross-platform it is. I want to just highlight again how amazing it is that you can play with friends on almost any device they possibly own. It's ideal for couples. It's ideal for people who live together in the same house, all kinds of things like that. And I want to bring up RG's comment here, referencing the fact that Microsoft either is or is about to increase the price of Minecraft, saying why take chances innovating when you can simply raise current prices. And that's unfortunate to say that they probably will make more money by raising the price of Minecraft than they would by porting it to Quest while spending no extra money. And that's unfortunate.
Well, what do we got next, David? I'm still excited to get to Cubic Layer because it is going to bring us full circle back to Minecraft a little bit.
Sure. So next we are talking about the Ray-Ban Meta glasses, the next generation. So we have heard a lot about Hypernova, which is the high-end Meta smart glasses with a HUD heads-up display coming later this year. But Hypernova is essentially what Quest Pro was to Quest 2. it is to the Ray-Ban Meta glasses. It's reportedly going to be, above $1,000 on the range even of maybe $1,300. Those monocular HUD glasses with the wristband that we've been talking about. But that's not what we're talking about today. I'm just mentioning it to be clear that that's actually not this. Hypernova, late 2025 this year is its schedule. These glasses that we're going to talk about today are reportedly set for next year, 2026. And they are codenamed Aperol and Bellini. And they are, as you may mention, or you may
What was
have
that
guessed,
second name, David? I think your mic got a little bit weird on the second brand.
Aperol and Bellini. They're both Italian drinks. EssilorLuxottica, the partner that owns Ray-Ban and Oakley, etc., is obviously a European country with a heavy presence in Italy. So the code names pretty much give away what it is, but so does the report, right? According to the report, Aperol and Bellini are the code names for next generation smart glasses in partnership with EssilorLuxottica, set to launch next year. So they would be the direct successors to the Ray-Ban Meta glasses. We don't know what they're going to be called, but for the sake of discussion, we can just say Ray-Ban Meta 2 or something here, right? And according to this report, they will have a set of features internally referred to as super sensing, wherein the live AI feature, which is coming soon to the current Ray-Ban Meta glasses, will be able to run in the background for hours at a time, not minutes. So currently, to give context on that live AI feature, it is being tested by some early access testers and will launch in the US and Canada soon. And the idea of live AI is that you start a session, you say, hey, Meta, start live AI. And during that session, the AI is continuously on. You don't have to say, hey, Meta anymore. You can just talk to it. You can just say, if you're cooking, you can say, which ingredient next? And, oh, did I put that on for too long? Or if you're walking around a city, you can say, oh, and what's that up there? And is that the right bridge over there? And it will kind of continuously be accessing your camera and be able to have a conversation, right? It's having Jarvis in your ear, or whatever analogy you want to make. The AI is basically on a phone call with you and able to see what you're seeing. And the problem is that on the current hardware, this can only work for about 30 minutes until the battery just dies, right? So it's an interesting novelty. You could do it for very short things, but it's not practical. Reportedly, the big focus of the next generation will be getting this live AI feature to run for hours at a time. So likely on a technical level, they're going to have the next generation chipset. This runs the AR1 Gen 1. This will probably be the AR1 Gen 2. They will probably have hardware acceleration for this kind of tasks, dedicated parts of the chipset that are designed for exactly this functionality. And that will naturally allow this to happen without even having to increase the battery size or increase the cost or anything like that. They also want to use this to add proactive AI to live AI. So an example this report brings up, this is a report from the Information, to be clear, is that you would be told to pick up your keys if you walked out of your house without your keys. The AI would say, oh, you forgot your keys back there. If you're walking home and you forgot to go and pick up the ingredients for a recipe you're going to make later, it would say, oh, you need to pop into that store over there. And the kind of other feature they're exploring apparently is facial recognition. So it would be able to tell you, oh, this person you're supposed to meet is over there, or if you forget someone's name. And while the current Ray-Ban Meta glasses always activate the white LED on the front when the camera is in use, either by you capturing a photo or video or by Meta AI, according to this report from the Information, Mark Zuckerberg has questioned whether it could be off during this live AI mode. And Meta is apparently weighing this currently. And this comes alongside deeper changes in Meta that the Information reported on back in February about how they are giving their privacy, integrity, and legal teams less authority to block ideas, while the product teams have more autonomy on these issues. So the idea is this LED would still show if you're taking a photo or a video, or if you are, if you're taking a photo or a video, but if you just have the AI constantly running in the background, which is the purpose of this feature, that LED would not show. But again, if you try to capture an image, take a picture, take a video, the LED would still pop on.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm so unenthused about Meta AI that it's hard for me to understand all these features being transformative. But God, there's so many things going around in my head right now, and I don't want to seem angry because of lack of access here, right? Like one of the things here that's happened, and I just have to give this context. Meta's picking certain people to give really early features to, and go out and test these features. And the thing about it is, like, there's an assumption that, like, that person that you're giving these features to is going to continue covering, or the organization that you've given these glasses to earlier, this feature too early, is going to continue covering you indefinitely. And therefore, it's a good idea here to bring them into the fold, to let them try out your things early, to get their honest opinions on what you're trying out early, and then respond to that before the publication comes out that you're doing this, right? And that makes sense. I get it. But this audience, I'm not going to win this argument with this audience about this situation. But there are places in the world where there are signs up that say, "Do not take pictures of my artwork. Do not pull your phone out of your pocket in here." There's a bookstore right around the corner that has a big picture of "Don't use a cell phone in this bookstore." And that's the bookstore making a statement about focus, that they don't want, that they want their customers coming into the store to have. You come into our little bookstore, we expect you to be looking for books, not chatting on a phone or taking pictures of the books, or all the other things that you might be doing. The artwork is the other example of, don't take photos of my artwork and then try to recreate it in AI, or try to recreate it yourself, or make a print from the photo you just took. And here is Meta making this absolutely the easiest task in the world. Those two things. Oh, you look around at all the books in the cute little bookstore? I actually need Meta AI to go purchase that for me right now off of Amazon or off of meta.com at $2 less than they're charging in this physical bookstore, because I'm such a clever, special person with my Meta AI glasses, and I don't want to get ripped off in store, right? Like,
Sure.
what I'm saying is, we have yet
Walk
to
out
see
of
the
the store.
signs that say Meta AI is not allowed here.
Sure, I don't. I understand what you're saying about some stores don't want you to take pictures. There are lots of kind of museums and things like that don't allow photography. That's completely fine. But I mean, the example of like using it to buy it on Amazon, you can just look at the book and walk out the door and buy it on Amazon, right? Or you can bring out your phone and do it. People do that in bookstores all the time. I don't see that as being a kind of specific blocking issue
It's the
there.
social statement of, this is not allowed here, and you're actually pulling apart the social fabric of this space that I've made by using technology the way you're using it. I went to a movie over the weekend at a theater where they don't have strong enforcement of rules over cell phones. And there was a person over here on their cell phone. There was a person over there on their cell phone. And before the movie started, there were 8 flashlights helping everyone to their seats. Everyone had their flashlight helping finding where to their seat. But there were 2 people on cell phones this entire movie, sitting in corners thinking they're not bothering anyone, still trying to be socially acceptable in a subtle way. But because the rule of one theater where you don't use cell phones and we will kick you out if you use a cell phone during this movie is different in this other theater where they won't kick you out for it, there's people doing it. And we just don't have this about AI yet. We don't have this about all day. Like, how many people don't understand that these cameras are capturing footage all the time?
Yeah, so I mean, to be clear, they aren't today, and they're not capturing even when they are, right? It depends how you define capturing and recording. When it comes to cinemas,
There
the
are
reason, one second, sorry, when
the
it comes to
general
cinemas,
public
the
does
reason
not
you don't
understand
use
that
your
the
phone in a
white light
cinema is
equals
because there's a
recording.
phone screen, right? It annoys people because you have the phone screen on, right? You're trying to watch the movie, and the light blinds you, the
It's a
noise
social
from the phone.
signal that you're recording as well, and the white light is not the same social signal.
Sure, I think it is, right. If you were in a cinema and you're recording with your glasses, you would clearly see with the if in a dark room, that LED would be crystal
Nope,
clear.
not right. Nope, it's
What do you
not.
mean? Of
It's not
course it
how.
would be. Yeah,
No, so I'm at a concert. I'm at a concert, and I want to film. Can you put it on both? I'm at a concert, and I want to film the band over there. I take my phone out and hold it like this, and everyone to my sides sees I'm filming because I'm holding a phone, an object right here. right? I press the button on my glasses and the white light faces forward. All the people to my sides don't see it. Their gaze is all directed forward. So I go like this real quick, and I've captured everyone's faces to my left and right, and they did not see me make that look. They did not see the white flash. They did not see the white light. They have no idea I'm recording because I was looking this direction just like they are.
Sure, yeah. As these things become more normalized, that will be something that people have to understand, right? I think when phones with cameras first came out, people would have been surprised by that. I think if you go to any concert today, all you will see is just people staring at their phone recording, and it's depressing, right? You have an artist in front of you, and you're actually not even looking at them. You're looking at the 2D rectangle in your hand, recording them. And we've seen, for example, in that Apple Vision Pro Metallica concert, you can see this so viscerally because some of the immersive cameras are on stage, and they're like, you can see that everyone is just pointing a phone, and that's horrendously depressing, right? There are artists that specifically like have broken down in the middle of their concerts because these rectangles are pointed at them. I think it would be a lot more pro-social to have people looking at you through glasses if they're recording than it would to have people holding up a phone. But you can debate that, of course.
It's amazing to see all of you technically minded folks out there tearing apart the technical reasons why this can be done anywhere, anytime by anyone, and why in fact it is done by anywhere, anyone, anytime. But they have a law, as I understand it, in Japan, that the cameras have to make sounds there because of a social ill there of pointing cameras at people when they didn't know that that was happening. So you can go win your technical argument about the cat is out of the bag. This is Palmer Lucky's argument that this is Pandora's box. You don't put Pandora back, but you don't put the monsters back in Pandora's box. You have to deal with what they're out. I get that argument, and it doesn't follow. It doesn't incorporate social norms, social expectations, social rule setting. You're making legal, technical arguments about social behavior of like, how do I enter society with you, David, and not feel like you are capturing my soul by just looking at me, that you're producing content for the views, right? Like, I just want to talk to you.
Sure, but I think that specifically is a social argument, right? The Pandora's box argument isn't anything to do with the technology. It could have been an AI pin. It could be, an earbud that takes cameras. It doesn't matter. Like that's an argument about.
And y'all are weird.
Culture. Hold on, let me just.
Y'all are weird.
Sure, but again, I think you can't ignore the context of of social world we're in. That actually is the social argument. That if we were having this conversation 25 years ago, a lot of the things you're saying would kind of be social norms, but we are already in that world. As I've said before, you can walk down a street and every single doorbell has a camera on it. Every car has a dash cam. There are people recording TikToks in the side of the street. There are security cameras recording everywhere. How many cities can you go through and walk down an average street and not be on double-digit cameras all the time? We're already in that world.
The cameras are police. Do you not see the cameras are police?
You're going to have to expand on that.
Cameras are our enforcement. They are going, if you go rob something in a store, you can make it out the front door and home, and then the police come up to your front door and arrest you using the camera footage of the store as the evidentiary path all the way to you being arrested. It's police. This is enforcement. This is a great path to enforcement because it doesn't require humans, right? You can have a police force without having the police. You're all making the same argument, right? Like, oh, the cameras on cars is to protect property. It's police, right? Like, I need something to go take to the police to show the criminals that tried to take my money from me. Like, I get it. I understand the market forces driving the use cases of this way, but there's a lot of places in our world where
it's not market
police
forces,
aren't enjoyed.
Sure, but I mean, I'd say it's insurance companies. I think it's a bit simplistic to say police. If someone robs your house, sure, you want to have that doorbell camera that can show who they are and find them, and people do that all the time, of course. For people who have a dash cam, they do it because if someone, does an insurance scam on you by jumping out in front of you, or if someone causes an accident, you want to have evidence that you didn't cause the accident. Before dash cams, it would be your word against theirs, and maybe you have a witness down the street. If you don't, that's your word against theirs, and the insurance company has to deliberate. If you're a bad driver, you're not going to want it, but it's not that like markets are forcing people to do this. I know that's not what you literally mean by market forces, but people buy them because they want this. And when it comes to cameras that people own, like their phone camera, it's memories. Cameras are memories. They want to relive the moment. Why are they recording that concert? Because they want to live it back. The other reason is they're for content, right? There's a group of people who they are producing, TikToks and Instagrams, and that's their kind of lifestyle. You can talk about that separately, but for the majority of people, they capture these images because they want to relive the memory of where they were, right? On holidays, they're doing skiing, right? They've done a cool skateboard trick, whatever their thing is, they want to have a memory of it.
If I was to have a neighborhood watch, I would equip all the members of the neighborhood watch with these glasses. I would get us all on a shared surveillance network system. And any person who is not a resident of the community will get logged by the community, right? Y'all get a pop-up on your front door. 4 unknown faces have entered your community this week. Let's look at those 4 faces today. And on your front door, on your your VR headset, you have a list of all the new faces that are in your community this day. You've got the names next to them. You've got their ages. You've got where they're from. And you start looking at this list and go, our community is changing so much. Look at these people. These people are just disgusting. I'm being very facetious here in my presentation of how this works, but I'm seeing our comments are sort of alight with the fury of my terminology here, and they're all undoing exactly how this works, right? Amazon is sharing the Ring data with various organizations, and we're already here, right? We already have community watches that do what I'm discussing right now.
Yeah, you don't need glasses for that, right? There's already security cameras and doorbells on everyone's door, right? I understand. Like, it seems that you're bringing up malicious usage of technology, but I don't think it's inherent in the technology. These are tools, and how people choose to use them is up to them.
The follow-on effects still shape our society, right? I'm saying that, like, this is going to enhance a behavior that's already there, potentially toward a breaking point that is going to hurt some folks, right? Like, it's going to break some folks. And I keep thinking about these hypernova glasses or the HUD display, right? Imagine you're talking to someone and you ask them a question and they get this weird little tick. And the weird little tick is to point their eyes up and to the right and to start talking to their robot before they answer your question. Right? Maybe they need to go get the information from the AI before they're ready to respond to you in conversation. That's how this is going to change, right? Like, how many arguments have we had as people where it's like, I didn't do my research on this. I should go read up on this a little bit more. And you've just made an enemy over the last hour arguing with this person over whatever subject, and neither of you were read up on the material. Oh, well, now you've got your Meta AR glasses, and each of you can point your eyes up to the right and ask your question of the Meta AI as you're doing your research in a live debate with another person. I'm pointing out that this whole interaction is so different than anything we had in the 20th century and anything we had in the first 25 years of the 21st century. And we are not ready as people, for how it's going to change everyday interactions. And it's going to be probably for the better in most places, but I'm always going to be looking at those places where, like, that's actually really terrible, right? Like you think about, I always think about mistakes, right? How do people make mistakes and come back from those mistakes? Do cameras allow that to happen? Or do they always record your worst mistake for the rest of the world to constantly pull up in every conversation for the rest of your life? You think about the kid, the Star Wars kid doing the lightsaber battle, right? Imagine that kid for the next, 50 years of his time on Earth every time he walks beside another person, that video pops up above his head as the most popular piece of internet content that has ever existed about this individual. And the guy gets laughed at by every single person he walks by in the real world because he recorded that Star Wars video back at the turn of the century, right? We can't have that. We're not going to have that. But it's still we're still arguing that like there's like this small subset of folks out there that like that would be kind of cool. I kind of love to see all of everyone's information floating above their heads. And I just got to point, no, I don't want that. That's weird. And that's where we are, right? Like that's all I'm saying is there's an ongoing debate that's unsettled here over exactly how laws and society are going to make space for this new type of interaction.
Yeah, that's certainly a very kind of distressing possible use case. There is actually already in the EU, I'm pretty sure this is EU, a right to be forgotten law that has been exercised many times where if there is something, as you say, that you're famous for, it could be video, it could have just been an article, and you don't want that anymore, you can actually kind of petition to a search engine like Google to have it removed. And you actually see this sometimes. If you search someone's name, there'll be a little disclaimer at the bottom of the Google search results saying
David, you're right.
Sorry,
you're right.
I'm just saying it just says this person's some of this data is not available in Europe. You need to go to another source than Google.
But that is the same economic disparity situation as people in prison, right? Like there's the people in prison are are largely people who didn't have other economic means for living their lives, and so they resorted to other things. And you're describing the same thing. Like I have to have the money to go pay for a service to remove my information from online. What about the people who cannot afford that service?
I don't think you'd have to pay for it. I'm fairly sure this is something that they have like a public form that you can sign in and it's free.
I'm in the United States here, and it's not a public service here.
No, I agree.
We should move on from this one. Yeah,
right to be forgotten is important. Yeah. Just want to be crystal clear though, when it comes to these glasses, these Aperol and Bellini, and yes, those are Italian drinks, as a commenter asked earlier. It's not that they will be recording constantly. And my understanding of how this continuous AI works based on Google's Project Astra is that it encodes the visuals into token space anyway. So you couldn't even, they're not video files, right? Like it is an interesting question to ask though, when do we get glasses that could constantly record? Because, I just want to point out, you do always say these glasses always recording. They're not, right? Like the battery would die in 15 minutes if you were constantly writing to the storage, right? But it is possible that one day we will get glasses, like in that Black Mirror episode in season 1, that record literally everything and that you can play back everything. And then that's when I think some of these questions become a lot more prevalent. Because, you bring up, for example, earlier in Japan that they have that law about you have to always have the camera make a sound. Like the iPhone camera in Japan always makes the sound, even if your phone's on super silent, even if you've got every volume down to 0, it will make it full volume, the click noise. And I think that's a great law, by the way. I think that absolutely should be a thing. You could argue that there are some edge cases where maybe you're trying to record the police committing an action that is unethical. Maybe you're a domestic violence victim who's trying to record your abuser for evidence, and now you've just given away, right? There are legitimate reasons. I think Wabo brought up that journalists, for example, need to be able to record certain interactions and record things without it being known. And they're saying that there are First Amendment rulings that have kind of protected the right to record in public spaces specifically for journalists. So there's always a trade-off to even these privacy things, right? So you're bringing up accurately that there are indeed trade-offs to technology that gives you new capabilities. Of course, you can use a knife to make a cake, or you can use a knife to kill someone. But there are also trade-offs to some of these privacy tools that are kind of coming back to counteract it, right? It's all trade-offs either direction.
Well, the next story we have here is cubic layer, right?
Yeah,
I'll relate
sorry,
this
the one
back.
again I just wanted to quickly run down, just so our audience is aware, and this will take 2 minutes, is that based on this report and the other reporting we've seen from Bloomberg, The Information, the Financial Times, we now believe that there are 6 Meta smart glasses products slated to launch in the next 2.5 years. So Oakley Meta glasses and Hypernova later this year. That's Oakley smart glasses, Hypernova monocular HUD glasses later this year. Next year, Aperol and Bellini, next gen mainstream smart glasses, probably, Ray-Ban Meta glasses too, whatever they're called. And then 2027, Hypernova 2, which is same concept as Hypernova, but binocular. And then Artemis, the first true AR glasses. So six AR products, sorry, not AR products, six glasses products from Meta over the next 2 years. That's the only context I wanted to add. Now please tell us all about Cubic Layer on Apple Vision Pro because it looks super duper interesting.
Yeah, I will say that I record the police when I see them with my glasses and my devices. I do watch them. Who watches the watchers? I do. All right, so the Cubic Layer app I've tried proves some very interesting things about Vision OS. So I talked to this developer the other night. And there's many things to unfold here. And if there's any way, I don't know if you can get the video or any of the videos that were in that article pulled up, David, but I would love to show them if we can. But this was Cubic Layer. David pointed it out to me and said, "Do you want to go to Central Park and try this out?" And I'm like, "What? Okay." And I looked at it and I downloaded it in Central Park of New York. I put on my Vision Pro on a park bench in Central Park. I downloaded Cubic Layer, this app, to my Vision Pro using tethering on my iPhone. And then I opened it up and I started exploring. The app has 3 or 4 interfaces. It has a flat panel mode, a volume mode, and then immersive mode. And then the immersive mode can either be mixed reality or virtual reality, depending on how you want to tune your environmental distractions. It took me 3 or 4 days of testing to find out all the features, like how this app worked in all of its different scenarios. And what's remarkable here is the app feels very simplistic. At the same time, it also feels very complex. And the reason it does both of those things is this has the feel of a dev who's worked extraordinarily hard simply to surface the underlying data that the headset itself is capturing. So I'm sitting on this park bench in New York, and several things happen that I need to talk about. And first I'll talk about in a minute. I'll talk about walking around Central Park and how I tested the recording data, how this sees in 3D around me. But the very first thing I did actually in Central Park before I even launched Cubic Layer was I wanted to launch Encounter Dinosaurs. That's the very high-end Jon Favreau directed dinosaurs experience on Apple Vision Pro. I wanted to see how it would handle an outdoor space, because when you're indoors, the dinosaurs walk into your room through a big portal that opens, and the portals open in different ways depending on where you are. I pulled out this dinosaur coming right in front of me, and I'm sitting there, and I'm on the bench. Dinosaurs are coming out to me. All I see right here in front of me, my entire field of view, is filled with the portal to the dinosaur realm. So the dinosaurs have rocks over there, and they're walking out of the rocks into Central Park here with me. If I look to my left or look to my right, I can see the people walking through Central Park. I'm sitting there on the bench, and like I said, I've basically got virtual reality in front of me because I can't see any mixed reality, any pass-through environment. And the headset starts cutting out the face of every single person walking by me in Central Park. So I'm for all intents and purposes in a virtual world looking at all these dinosaurs, but every human in the physical space with me is cut out like a little circle walking past me in reality. And most of those people are looking at me and laughing at me. They're like smiling at me, waving at me. They know they're on camera. They know I'm being weird and doing something weird in public. I'm wearing a very expensive computer that I'm worried about losing. Should I, yeah, I'm worried about basically being thieved because it doesn't have Find My on it, I don't think. And all these things are going through my head while I'm also testing this thing in public. This wasn't the last of my testing that day. I'm gonna go to a bit of testing I did that day in a minute. I took it to a cafe. where I felt a little bit safer to pull it out and use it. And it was actually a really effective use of VR in a cafe. All right, but now here I want to walk through my testing here of what I did. I'm sitting there on the bench and I start sketching voxels just like this. Everywhere I pinch and pull, I make a voxel. So I sketch Ian was here in the open air with my voxels, sitting on the open bench. I stand up, walk away off the bench into the middle of Central Park, turn back and look, and there is my creation sitting there at the park bench that I made. I'm like, let's see how far this goes. I keep walking, and there's a tree about, I don't know, 50 or 100 feet behind the bench. I go around the tree and stand behind the tree and start doing this to look at the bench that's over there. And the tree is occluding in front of my thing that I made over at the bench. So mixed reality, mentally, the way the system is working, it's properly putting this real physical tree. It's cutting out the geometry of it, and it's putting it in front of virtual content that is 100 feet that way. I'm like, wow, okay, that's actually pretty impressive. So then what I start doing is I started making voxel trails around this entire field. I go around this tree and make a voxel trail throughout this tree, and then I walk over to this other tree and I make a voxel trail going around this tree. And then I start doing my same leaning test and start looking at, okay, how is it working here? This app surfaced all of this data for me to be able to test. Oh, he's got the mapping data of the tree and he's masking that out so that the things behind it are working. He's also chunking the data so that it like, if I move too far away from certain creations, it won't load them. It'll actually fade them because I've walked too far away. But when I walk back to them, they reappear. That's just a way to manage performance on a limited headset. It also, one of the things he surfaced here is the scanning data. So it showed a blue mesh on everything, including the trees, including the ground. I got to see this blue mesh. And I'm just meshing all of Central Park that I can see and trying to see, okay, when does my mesh get confused? When does it start fritzing out? Fascinating experience just because of the way this app has surfaced all of the underlying data. It also has anchors, world anchors. And so one of the things I tried is I went home and then I came back the next day and I wanted to compare the anchor that I had in my headset to the anchor that, like, how far does it say I actually am from where I was yesterday? And it was a couple meters off. And the dev told me that would be what we're seeing. What we're seeing in this screenshot in particular is he's got a physical compass that he took up a mountain during testing. And he was comparing it to the compass he's getting inside of his app. And over time, he'll watch this compass like correct, I think, in order to, as it gets better information, to match those two points. But he took this dozens of miles out in the wilderness to test out all these features. There were things he showed me, like going to the top of a mountain and showing all the spatial data. And he had the markers. David would have the right terminology for the point cloud data that he had, or the feature set data that he has. But a bunch of the features are like the headset sees features that are in snow, right? So the headset has created a map of this location that he's been, but it incorporates stuff that won't be there in about 3 months, right? In 2 months, that snow will not be there. The appearance of the entire region will look different. And so all the mapping that the headset has done isn't going to be relevant in just a few months' time. So this dev spent a lot of time hiking outdoors to understand exactly what the headset is doing. And you can go download this if you've got an Apple Vision Pro and really get a really, really strong understanding of what the headset can do. And I think our last story is going to show that a dev has hacked together similar functionality on a Quest 3, right, David?
Yeah, for sure. To respond to a comment from LL, could a video be played on the display behind you guys? Yeah, we're working on that. That's something we really will have soon. You should go to uploadvr.com. I've put the link in to the chat here. You can go and watch these videos. You can just mute the site and watch what we're talking about. I really, really recommend you do that because this is one of those stories where you need to see what we're talking about to really kind of get it. And here is kind of a screenshot of exactly what Ian's talking about, where Apple Vision Pro uses its LiDAR to create a real-time 3D environment mesh that is continuously updated. There's no setup process. And so, if you did go and scoop this snow away, it would be reflected by that, right? You would see the kind of scoop mark in this mesh. And the gameplay here is, as you said earlier, just like kind of Minecraft blocks at small scale and things like that. And yeah, it's a remarkable kind of test of outdoor mixed reality. And yeah, I think I really want to try these kind of things out, but in the UK, I'm just so worried about the rain. It can just start raining in the UK, like out of nowhere. I mean, it can be sunny day. You'd be like, how did these clouds even come here? There were no clouds 5 seconds ago, and now it's raining. So I would I would I would cringe if a raindrop hit the headset, which is why I'm so
Oh
concerned
God,
about this.
yeah.
But I would love to be in a country where the weather's stable enough to try this out.
So so a couple of things I need to convey, and I've had to talk to Don about this a little bit. David has had his hands on Vision Pro, as well as me for the year for the year that it's been out. We've had our hands on these devices, but we've got Don Hopper out there who does an extraordinary amount of video for us and is always testing out everything on PCVR, everything on Quest. Um, and he's got a PSVR too. I sent him a PSVR as well, and he's taking those back and forth between the PlayStation and the PC. And so he's got all these systems, but what he hasn't experienced that you and I have experienced is what it's like to have 3 or 4 volumes or maybe 10 panels all floating around you at the same time in a Vision Pro. So one of the modes that I had to get used to in this app is you can make it a volume. So you can turn it from this, which is fully immersive. The app takes over your entire space and it uses it to show you the mapping data and let you make voxels in 3D space around you. Or you can say, actually make yourself a volume and contain yourself into this big rectangular cuboid floating in front of me. And I can lean into the volume and go like this, or with this hand actually, and make voxels inside this volume that's sitting over there in this room. But I can easily just lean back and turn to my right and make a couple moves in Demio, right? On a flat panel over here, but it's actually got depth to it, right? There's depth to that panel now that it's worked. Or I can look over here and play with a little pet that's in a volume over here. I can have all of these volumes all around me simultaneously. And at any given time, I can go, actually, I want Demio. I want to go to the basement at Demio. I want to see my spatial mapping data in Cubic Layer. And I want to go and have a meditation experience with this pet that's over here. And all of these things take over my room immediately. Unless you've used a Vision Pro, you don't know what this experience is like. You don't know the value of it. This is what has transformed me from. This is what's transformed me to using my headset as my primary computer.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Vision OS, its architecture is just so far ahead of anything else that it will be fascinating to see, is there an equivalent response from Meta and Google in the coming years? And it isn't clear, as you say, until you use Vision Pro, exactly what the benefits are here. Yes, you do have 2D multitasking in Horizon OS, right? You can have your multiple windows, but it's not the same thing as being able to do volumetric multitasking. Meta did talk about having these augments. Turned out they couldn't pull it off with the technical architecture that they were trying, and they've gone back to the drawing board on that. I'm sure they will get there at some point with Horizon OS, and I'm sure Android XR will have a response at some point. But the way in which Vision OS is architected is so far beyond. And James O'Loughlin is right to point out that Magic Leap, their Lumen OS, did have some of these same concepts. Yeah, they definitely did. That was super innovative from Magic Leap, and some of those same people went from Magic Leap to Apple to build Vision OS. What I really want to see in the future of Vision OS, in Vision OS 3, as I've said before, is volumes need to become more powerful, because what, as you say, there is this harsh delineation between what you can do in a volume and what you can do in a full space. And the analogy is like it's going full screen. When you go into a full space, you don't get any of that multitasking anymore. To be able to actually place these cubes down in the world and have them stay in an actual position and, be like you're playing with Minecraft blocks in real life, that requires a full space, which you lose all of this multitasking capabilities. And what we really want to see in the future of Vision OS is, how does Apple bridge this gap? Because yes, you can have these volumes, right? As you say, you can have this miniature version of these cubes, and you can have your flat screen and your other flat screen and your virtual pet, but your virtual pet's very limited in where it can be, and it can't even be anchored to real positions, right? How do we get all of those capabilities of environment awareness and having your pet actually on your table and things like that within this shared space? That is what we're going to be. I'm sure you and I and all of our audience here will be watching that WWDC live stream from Apple in the first week of June. In the early June, sorry, just laser focused on what exactly is next for Vision OS, because they've introduced it with the Vision OS 1. They've kind of polished off all the little issues that were there, the obvious low hanging fruit with Vision OS 2. With Vision OS 3, I think we're going to see, what do we see architecturally change to allow this? Because you're right that there is just, it's tantalizing to see what can be. How do we get that on a environment aware level?
What I love about this is, gosh, there's so many things I can talk about here, and you're going to have to forgive me for just, both our audience and David are going to have to forgive me for jumping all over the board here. But David has a tablet here, right here in this studio, right? And it's a beautiful little object. And I would love this object to be in Vision OS as a tool for me, right? Because it's a research device. It has all of our media on it that gives me all of these tools. Like I can pull up so much of our content and the things we do. Oh, let's see. Does this work? And I can do that, but I need this in other apps. Like right now, I've lost the ability to go and meet people and walk about with all of this information in front of me that we have in our studio, right? Like, because I can't take this little tool that you've made with me to other places. But this is even more frustrating. Like, all right, I don't know if my performance went a little wonky when I tried to play that video, so I don't know what happened there.
The videos don't work anymore. That's
okay. Sorry. I might need to quit and come back. What I'm trying to say is that, like, I have made four or five articles at this point for UploadVR.com that were dictated directly into the browser. And the obvious question I had from other people in this profession was, did it take you longer to do it that way than you could have if you had typed it on a keyboard? And it actually did take me a little bit longer to do via dictation than I could have done by keyboard, except for two things. I did it on a VR headset where I never lost focus on the window in front of me. So I turned myself to the moon, and I had a single window up in front of me and a second window over here as reference material and a third window over here as secondary reference material. And I started speaking sentence by sentence the words of my article into the thing. And then I pinched in the open air and moved a cursor around in order to edit the various words that were wrong in the translation. What is lost in that explanation, right, is if I was doing that at a laptop, I'm sitting there at a laptop, and my cat comes over and sits on the couch next to me. There's about 30 seconds there where I'm going to pet the cat. I'm going to look at him. I'm going to be distracted by him. And then I'm going to try to get my brain back into the flow of what I was just speaking to in front of this web browser right in front of me, right? I'm not losing that time when I'm inside of VR, when I've taken away the pass-through and I've focused all on this singular environment. And there's also another time that I'm not losing if I'm able to produce content this way. I'm not losing the time that it takes to switch devices. And this, I cannot I cannot properly convey how enormously frustrating it is that I have to continue switching devices in the year 2025 in order to produce content for UploadVR.com. So to give you an example of one of the things I have to switch devices for is that video that I'm trying to play in here that David tried to pull up that we're encouraging you to go to read on UploadVR.com. It's produced in one format by the Vision OS operating system. And in order for me, like if I want to take it from a .mov to a .mp4, I have to airdrop that video to a Mac, and then I change the extension on the video from .mov to .mp4. The operating system says, would I like to change that? I hit OK. Now my file can be dragged back into our browser window and added as something for you, our readers, to consume. I have to switch from the Vision Pro, where I've just captured video, I've just dictated my article. I have to now take it off, go and grab a laptop, put it in front of me. I have to maybe have remembered to airdrop the video from my headset to my laptop first in order for it to be here, to change the file name on it for it to be dragged back into the window. This is all such a long-winded way of coming back here, David, where I want a volume right here, a volume right here, a volume right here. And like, this is my conversion volume, right? I grab my video from this panel over here and I put it in the conversion volume. And bloop, 30 seconds later, or maybe instantaneously, the video is spit back out in front of the volume. And oh, this is a .mp4. And then I take it from this volume and I hand it over to this volume, right? I'm using my human sense, like my human ability to reach and pull things out of places around me and move it along the production pipeline into our website. And I need it. I need it. This is what I need to work a full day inside of my headset and get all of the work I need to be done, get done for this team, right? I should be able, and I did do this with Cubic Layer and another dev over the last week. Like I've started touching on this. Like I can be on a keyboard typing into our website while the person is standing right there that I'm interviewing. And to think about what I'm describing, like you don't understand how that changes the journalism role if you haven't been a journalist for 20 years. But like 20 years ago, I'm taking a pencil and a piece of paper and I'm going out to physical locations and I'm saying, tell me about what you're doing. And I'm trying to take notes as quickly as I can. And then I got an iPhone to record the audio of what that person is saying. And I'm like, okay, just say it to the thing and I'll take it back and transcribe it. And then I'll figure out the article. And here, we all of that's gone, right? I could be in walkabout mini golf in some situations and have a person come up to me, and I've done this already, right? I'm typing their quotes into our website as they're saying them. But I need all of this to be effortless in headset. If there's a 3D object that we're writing about or someone is included in their world, we should be able to like do that same process I was just talking about of getting that 3D object from, I don't know, a Quest only format into a format that works on both Vision Pro and Quest 3 and also on Horizon and also on Android and also on Steam. And then we present that content to our viewers out there, and whatever headset they're on, they get our reporting. They get our latest article about whatever. I think I've gotten it across. Let me know if there's any comments out there. I'm going to need to quit it and come back to get my performance back. But I wanted to paint that picture out there of these multiple volumes out there and how it fits with my need to work in headset for longer. And yeah, you're right. Horizon is going to need its own version of this. But I think this is where I've been wondering if this is where the branching of the operating systems is going to form. Like you can't have Horizon announce those features before they see how it works in Android XR. All right, I'll be right back.
Yeah, just to underscore what Ian is saying there, it is, VR, MR, AR, spatial computing, whatever you want to call it, it does need a different app model. The idea that the application that you're in has sole exclusive control of all 3D rendering, and the only other applications that can exist are 2D panels, that can't hold for the future. And once you see how it can be done differently on Vision OS, it's very clear that it does need to be there everywhere else. And absolutely, as Ian brings up, you do want to be able to have, the virtual tablet from one application in another, or some sort of virtual pet that can follow you through. How you get that to work in an immersive space is a different question. As I keep saying, this is what I want to see the evolution of Vision OS do. Today, this isn't something you can do. It's very much so. These volumes are heavily, heavily restricted in what they can do, but you can see a glimpse there of what could happen and what could be possible. And indeed, this is the thing we will be keeping the kind of closest eye on Android XR and Horizon OS on in the coming years, to see what their response to this is, because it's going to be difficult to implement the same thing on Android. It's going to be. If you didn't build the operating system for this, if you don't have a shared renderer, that doesn't work, right? Like, how this works on a fundamental level is that you're really only running one app, the Vision OS shared space. And these volumes and windows aren't really apps. They are apps, but they're not really apps. They're just kind of sending app metadata. They're sending content, right? Like the 3D model it wants to display and the UI it wants to put. And the Apple renderer is doing everything else. It's doing the interactions, the physics, the lighting, the sound, right? Like the reason that when you have a volume in Vision OS, it actually is being lit by your real world lamp and has a shadow in the same direction. All of that happens because Apple is doing the environment understanding and doing the rendering. And this can't work if every single app is its own island, right? You can't have, if you're running 5 volumes, 5 different instances of Unity, all running their own game engine, doing their own render loop over and over. This is why it doesn't work without a completely different architectural approach, right? You could maybe on PC, right? Maybe you just can brute force it on PC, and you literally do have 5 different game engines running at once. Okay, your 4090, your 5090 can do that. Your standalone headset that's running on battery, that's not going to be a practical response at all. It needs to be a shared renderer. It needs to be a shared interaction system. All of this has to be done together, and that's what is so tantalizing about Vision OS. And yeah, it's just we may be repeating ourselves here, but it is just so crucial to explain, like, that if you want serious spatial computing, if you want to stay inside this headset all day, like, this has to be the approach that the operating system takes.
And I love this. And this is one of the first times that David and I have really, like, it's taken a year for me to really understand this, honestly. Like, I've had to use it for a year. I think it's taken a year for devs to understand the benefits of the different spaces. And I think this gives us a space to say why we still write about VR, like why we still think VR is the king, right? Like, all of this, that these volumes, these windows, and James out there pointing out Lumen OS, what's forethought, like it's forward thinking design, right? Those volumes, those shared space things that you saw on Magic Leap, they were neat and ahead of its time, but they were limited by the field of view, and you are not limited by the field of view in this VR headset. So you can have 6 volumes up in front of you at one time, and they're not cut up. You can have 12 panels up in front of you. You can have one super gigantic panel that is bigger than going to the theater, and one super small volume right in front of you that you're just messing with right here from time to time while you're looking at the big panel up there. But a lot of it, and I'm seeing these people like, did anyone hit a wall with VR out there and become bored by VR? And I think that's a fair comment to make, because I think some of the investment has dried up towards things further out. But as David and I have kind of hinted at here, what we're starting to suspect, or what I'm starting to suspect, is virtual worlds need to begin as volumes. I'm starting to think you need to have something small you can interact with here in space with all of your other apps. And whenever you want to, you can go inside that volume and go inside a deeper, more immersive experience for a very long time. But that's when you cut out the other stuff. And that experience of like pulling the world out and going full space, it's really, really hard to do well. Like, it takes years of effort to build a reason for someone to go to your space. It's why I love the work of Walkabout Mini Golf, them learning how to do a new course every 8 weeks, distributed amongst 30 people worldwide on their team. They've got a cycle to release a new world on a regular basis for people and keep people coming back. There's not a whole lot of other places like that have a production workflow that's like, let's give you a new world every 6 weeks. But imagine if, for instance, this is the example in my mind. Imagine if you had God mode for Walkabout Mini Golf in an Apple Vision Pro, and you could see the lands floating in front of you as a volume. You could even adjust which land you want open. Maybe that could even be a room code that you have open as a volume sitting over there, right? You have a specified room code that's sitting open as a volume. And the moment someone comes into your room code, you get a little pop-up on that volume over there that says John Smith has entered your room, and you go, oh, cool. And you click on your volume and you open it up and you're there with them, right? That's how this should work. That's the flow. And if you go full circle to the beginning of this episode, it seems like John Carmack was really, really, really close to figuring this out for Minecraft in that ecosystem. I want a Minecraft volume. I think it would be great to have Minecraft as a nice big volume in front of me, and I can adjust it with a controller.
We should say that is what the original Minecraft mixed reality shown on HoloLens was. Obviously, it didn't look anything like the concept because of the field of view, as we will always say. The transparent AR headsets simply did not deliver what they promised. But that is, we should point out that people at HoloLens, people at Magic Leap, they were exploring this idea. It was clear that this needed to happen even all the way back in those days. And now we're finally seeing a technology that makes it not bad, right? It makes it not terrible, which is Apple Vision Pro and Vision OS. But I agree with you. That's a fascinating idea. The Vision OS developers have kind of been saying this since the start and kind of some of the guidelines. You should never take over someone's space until you need to, right? And a lot of games on Quest, VR games, are deeply frustrating about this.
That's the only thing they can do, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, they can keep you in pass-through. They choose, like I have a big issue with a lot of VR games in Quest, which is that they bring you into a black loading screen, followed by their studio logo, followed by their partner logo, followed by the name of their game, followed by, a crashing thunder noise, and then they load you in and bring you to this main menu, which is in a VR environment. None of that should be the case. It should load in pass-through, which is entirely possible. There are games that do this right, and then only bring me into fully immersive VR when I am needed, right? When you're actually in the multiplayer session. Don't bring me into a VR environment to point a laser pointer at a server browser. Put it, even on Quest today, where you can't do this as a 3D volume, right? You could do it as a 2D window. You can do it just as pass-through, and then you don't get, the home space multitasking, but you can do it as a 2D window. There are apps that do this. Gracia, for example, does it as a 2D window until it brings you in. But as you say on Vision OS, you can go further. You can load the multiplayer environment as a volume, and then when the other player joins, then you bring it in full. But when you have multitasking, that means you can continue what you're doing, right? Whether it be just typing your messages on iMessage or WhatsApp, whether it be watching the end of that Netflix show, whether it be kind of writing some things online, whatever you're doing, you can do this at the same time. And that makes the friction of going into the headset, as you're rightly pointing out, Ian, less of an issue, because you're not sitting there in a multiplayer environment waiting for your friend to join. You've got all of your existing apps, all of your existing ecosystems right there. You can continue to use your PC via Mac Virtual Display or the Windows 11 integration on Quest, and you can be ready to go, right, as soon as they load in. So I think it's absolutely right to say that this is a way in which you can combat friction by not making going into the experience fundamentally isolating until it's ready.
Yep. And I think that David and I are onto something here when it comes to the changing of the terminology inside Meta, right, from VR to mixed reality. The Apple has embraced spatial computing, and this is the sort of structure of what makes the Vision Pro a spatial computer. And let me end this whole little section by saying I left Central Park after testing Cubic Layer, and I went to Joe and the Juice, a little cafe here in New York, with my wife, and we sat down at a table there, and we played a board game. And the way we played the board game is I handed her my phone with mirroring on into my headset, so I had a copy of the device she's holding in her hand right in front of me. and this is Clank, one of our favorite board games, so we know it quite well. And so we ate our lunch. I was brought over my sandwich, and I'm eating the sandwich while in VR in the middle of the cafe. And the guy who brought us our sandwich started a conversation with me about the Vision Pro. And he is a Quest 3 owner back at home and wanted to know whether the Vision Pro was worth it. And I had to give him a very blunt reply that wait for the next generation of Vision Pro, because right now I'm finding that most often I need both the Vision Pro and my Mac together in order to do work in VR or use this headset. And I was like, yeah, good on you for getting a Quest 3. That's a great device right now. But here was a person who was like, in our camp, right? This is a person who should be viewing us and watching our show to try to decide what the right moment is to get the right headset for their particular computing tasks. And all I have to like we haven't even gotten to the discussion of like how do these spatial devices get integrated into a workflow for creating content for VR, right? Like I'm just creating content for the old flat web, and
Yeah.
I'm still encountering some glitches in how I pull this content from the different spaces. But like you've got USDZ files that are supported all throughout Vision OS, and you can import animated 3D models into a large range of apps inside Vision Pro. But if you want to go and make that same thing for the other system, you got to do conversions, you got to get it. There's no way to produce for like how
Yeah.
far are we from a situation where I build an app in Godot and then that volume or that app works on every single different headset? Anyways, I love this very real world discussion with someone out in the real world. And the only reason we had that discussion was because I had the confidence of like trying to use a Vision Pro in public. And sure enough, as soon as I used a Vision Pro in public, I started a very real conversation with another human about the value of VR. And like, it didn't involve all those people out there who are looking at me weird. All it involved was that one person who's like, I know what VR is, and I want to know if the Vision Pro is worth it. And I'm like, no, it's not worth it, but the next version will be, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's very simple. And we get so bent out of shape over these discussions in our community of like, are we talking about this the right way? And David, I would be curious if you disagree with me on anything I just said there as far as recommendations are concerned.
I think we'll have to get into it another time because I don't have much time left and we do have to get into our last topic there. We went kind of very, very far off. So our last topic here is the developer implementing continuous scene meshing on Quest 3. We kind of hinted at that a little while ago. So on Apple Vision Pro, this app that Ian's using to, place objects in the real world, to have occlusion in the real world, leverages the fact that the headset has a LiDAR sensor on board. So it's able to do continuous scene meshing. There's no setup process. The headset provides a continuously updating 3D mesh of your environment every frame to the developer. It's updated in the background. The developer doesn't have to do any work there. They get a mesh of your environment. It's also how it works on Pico 4 Ultra because they also have a depth sensor. It's a slightly different one. It's a time of flight sensor that's not specifically a LiDAR, but it's the same kind of thing. From the developer's perspective, it doesn't matter. You get a 3D mesh of the environment. So on Quest 3, this is not the case. As I'm sure all of you know, if you own a Quest 3, you scan your room as a single setup process where you look around, you see this scene mesh generated by the headset, and then that gets stored as the scene mesh for that room. And then developers can query that scene mesh and use it, but it exists only as it did when you scanned it. If your friend was in the room with you, their body gets scanned into the scene mesh. If your furniture was over there, it's over there forever. If you move an object on the table, even the plates on the table, the plant, it's exactly where it was when it was scanned. So there's two fundamental problems with that, right? Problem number one, as I said, it's stuck in time. Problem number two, you have to have done the scan in the first place. So these are kind of intermingled problems. They're kind of all the same problem in that you have to have an updated scan. You can, click in the menu and go into scene setup, click your room and update it. But Are you really going to take the time to do that? Or do you want to just launch straight into a mixed reality app and be in that mixed reality app? It's, again, friction we're talking about. You want to be in mixed reality, not spend 20 seconds to 2 minutes, scanning your room just to have a kind of flawed scan. So that's why we were so keen to report on what this developer has pulled off, the developer of Lasertag. Sorry, let me bring up his name here, Julian Trivieri. And what he's managed to do is use the depth API on Quest 3 to implement this continuous scene meshing himself. And so Quest 3 and 3S are capable of deriving depth from what you're looking at, but they have to use computer vision. They don't actually have a depth sensor. There was this massive misconception that Quest 3 has a depth sensor. It doesn't. It has an IR pattern projector that makes it easier for the headset to see depth, because if your room or wall doesn't have much structure, it can see how did that pattern kind of bend based on the geometry and use computer vision to figure that out. But fun fact, you can cover that IR projector and Quest 3 will scene mesh your room just fine. It may struggle a little bit on featureless walls, but it still works. It's not actually a depth sensor. What it's doing is just using the two front tracking cameras, comparing them, right? Stereo disparity, binocular disparity, and using computer vision to figure out depth. And the problem with that, the trade-off there, is that uses compute, right? It uses CPU, GPU, it uses battery, and thus Meta doesn't want to have that on all the time. Developers can access that depth, right, as a real-time first-person depth frame, each frame, with what's called the depth API, but that is optional for developers, and enabling that API has a significant performance cost. But Trivieri decided that using this depth API was better than using Meta's mesh system. And so what people mostly use a depth API for is occlusion in mixed reality. That's why not every app has it, because it has a performance cost. But if you're already using this for occlusion, Trivieri figured out that why not just save this depth data, right? Instead of just using it for each frame to do a test for occlusion, why not save it and put it into a kind of meshing algorithm and use it to generate your own scene mesh? And so that's what he pulled off for Lasertag. So when you play Lasertag, which is an early access game on the Meta Horizon store, you can have co-located multiplayer mixed reality laser tag battles in your house, outdoors, wherever the hell you want, without any setup. In fact, on the beta channel, they use a Bluetooth co-location discovery, so there's not even a room code. There's no typing, there's no setup. You literally, as the host, put on the headset and click start, and someone else puts on the headset, and when they launch the game, they're in with you. And there's no setup. You can shoot lasers at each other. They will be blocked by real-world geometry. You can do crazy stuff like close a real-world door to block their lasers, and their lasers will get, occluded by the other side of the door that you can't even see through your headset. You can shoot backwards and have that laser still be path traced through the environment and kind of blocked by geometry. You could theoretically hold up like a big kind of wooden panel as a shield, and their headset would see that and use that as a kind of occluding object. This is the kind of mixed reality with multiplayer and lack of friction that was only previously possible on Pico 4 Ultra and Apple Vision Pro. And even on Pico 4 Ultra and Vision Pro, you can't actually do this because they don't give you raw depth. So you can't actually do this in a real-time sense. It's only kind of slowly deconstructing. The magic of Lasertag is it does both. It uses the per frame depth API for direct depth testing and the scene mesh that it generates over time. Now, to be clear, the public version of Lasertag on the Quest store that you just download by clicking on it only uses the depth API per frame. To access the one that generates the mesh over time, you do need to use the opt-in beta build. There's a link to it on the UploadVR article. Trivieri's social pages have links to it. He's going to roll that out to the main version soon. It's just in testing. But I've tried this out, and it's magic. It's crazy how well it works. And so here's the craziest part. Not only is Lasertag free as an app, you can just go download it for free. He also open sourced this implementation so that other developers can use it. And lo and behold, someone already has. Well, they are currently building with it. The developer of Hauntify, which is like a spooky mixed reality game on Quest 3 and Vision Pro, is now going to use this in Quest 3 build of the game. He tells us at UploadVR that this summer he plans to roll out this update, meaning that you won't need to do the room setup process. You can even use it outdoors. And so, with these apps, like the room setup process is worse than you think because they're spanning your entire home, right? Lasertag in one room sucks, but Lasertag across your whole home is fun. But to get these scene mesh setups from the Meta's official process to work between multiple rooms, it takes minutes, like 10 plus minutes of every headset having to go around and scan this versus this setup process. And one of the other experiments Triviary did a few months ago, which is not in the current build and is not going to arrive anytime soon because it has issues, but is still a really, really interesting idea, is networked scene meshing. So you're continuously generating this scene mesh by using the depth API, but what about if you haven't been to a room yet? Well, in this experiment, which again is still just an experiment, Triviary had the headsets send their scene meshes to each other in real time, and then they all constructed together so that your scene mesh is the sum of what every other headset did. And seeing these experiments and talking to Triviary about it, it's so clear that if you wanted to do like a co-located mixed reality experience in real time like this, if you want to just go with your friends to somebody's big house or rent an Airbnb mansion, or go to a warehouse, or go to a park if you're in a country where the weather is suitable, and play laser tag like this, or if you imagine the app Ian brought up where you're building Minecraft like cubes, but if you want to add multiplayer to this dimension, you're gonna need this technology. It's so clear that this is not going to be the case. And I think, like, I need to point out that this is the biggest issue with mixed reality on Quest 3 today. Like, this need to have scanned a room mesh, the fact that the room mesh is a moment in time that is outdated by anything in your room moving, which is called life, right? Stuff in your room is going to move over time, is why so many developers have struggled to really take advantage of mixed reality on Quest 3. And I've spoken to some developers who say what happens is users launch their app, they need a scene mesh and they can't be bothered to scan it, or it's outdated and there's some issue with it, and they just refund the game. They're just like, I don't want to do this. I just want it to work. And so, to be clear, I would strongly suspect that Quest 4 is just going to work like this. This is just going to be how Quest 4 works for all developers. Meta said in January that it does plan to make scene meshes update automatically in a future update, so you wouldn't have that issue of them going stale, but you'd still need to scan in the first place. I wonder if the success of this and the fact that we're already seeing developers adopt it, right? Lasertag's kind of showcase was last week. Hauntify announced this week that they're using it. I think we're going to see so many developers adopt this that Meta is going to accelerate or even rethink their plans of how we do scene meshing on Quest 3, because it just isn't good enough. It's so much better than Quest 2 and Quest Pro, right? We did say at the time, like, we were so excited about it because on Quest 2 and Quest Pro, you had to literally manually mark out your walls by like pointing at one corner of the wall and then pointing up here and kind of drawing them out. And that was ridiculous, right? That is just silly. That's not ever going to work. But even Quest 3's current system isn't really practical. And I think, people talk all the time about, like, to what extent is Quest 3 a VR headset? How good is mixed reality? But I don't think we're seeing the potential of mixed reality today because of how the scene mesh works on Quest 3. And once we get this as standard, this continuously updating dynamic scene mesh, that's when we'll really see what mixed reality can be on Quest 3 and maybe Quest 4.
Yeah, David makes a really good point of just how fundamental and necessary this thing is that this dev has done. The model in my mind is, I'd wondered about 3 iPhones being taken to a field and put on tripods facing into like the same area. And those 3 iPhones could beam all of their spatial meshing data to the headsets inside, as well as the headsets inside all sending their meshing data to one another. But it's not just this meshing data, David. It's also the people that are walking into your space. You need to get alerts when someone new has entered your play space. And what we're finding again and again is that the Apple Vision Pro was architected with enough computer vision, like overhead, reserved for people detection, for meshing, for these fundamental things that are necessary to build good mixed reality over the long term. And we don't have good mixed reality yet, even on Vision Pro, right? Like, we're acting like it's still a long way to go before this gets good.
Yeah, it has its own issues. It's kind of weird where you do get a continuous scene mesh on Vision Pro, but you don't get a depth map, right? Or sorry, depth frames. You don't actually get to say, where is this object occluding, right? You can't on Quest 3, I could lift up a real life shield and have it block lasers on Apple Vision Pro, I can't, although it would eventually over time, add this to the scene mesh. It wouldn't be quick enough. Whereas on Quest 3, you kind of get both. So really weird, but with Lasertag solution, you get the best of both. Like, this is the promise of mixed reality. This is it. You can use real world objects. Theoretically, your like your hand, your arm, sorry, would block a laser. Um, you can close a door, you can hide behind furniture, you can move a chair, right? You could literally use a chair as a moving shield, like a chair with wheels, and move along the floor in laser tag, like shooting over the chair. Crazy things like this that really are mixed reality. It's not just pass through as your background. It is, you're actually mixing the virtual with the real in a way that is so tantalizing once you start to see it. And you can imagine all of the use cases, as you say, Ian. um, even this isn't, the ultimate thing, because you want to be able to then have awareness of each object within this mesh, right? You want to be able to say, oh, this is a cup you're picking up, or this is a plate you're picking up, or this is a cushion, or, things like this that fundamentally change things. Sure. But I think like this is the minimum to where developers can really rely on it. And I know you had problems with some recent mixed reality apps where, some of them didn't even check if you had a scene mesh, for example. So you kind of went in and didn't have it, or, your scene mesh was outdated. And, you can't expect the user to go and make sure their scene mesh is updated. There are so many mixed reality apps on Quest 3 today where they start with a giant like disclaimer screen going, please make sure your scene mesh is up to date and scanned. And then, shows you like a picture of the Quest system settings and shows you where to go. And like, that's just not practical. Like, I said when Quest 3 first came out, my review of it was, this is an excellent VR headset with barely passable mixed reality. And it's gotten a lot better since then, but it's still very primitive mixed reality. And that's something I need people to kind of keep in mind when they say, oh, I don't know if mixed reality is good for games. Like, what have we seen so far from developers? We haven't seen anything yet.
Yep, wonderful discussion here today. I need to get David out of here and us back to resting for the rest of the week. I encourage you to become a member at UploadVR.com, and thank you so much to our members both on YouTube and our website for supporting the work we do. These are incredibly complex technologies to talk about, hard for us to unfold terminology all over the board as we try to suss it out for you and really explain what's going on here. We're so thankful to have people like Guy Godin, the creator of Virtual Desktop, in our audience. We're going to be watching what you do, Guy, this year with great interest, because I cannot wait to see what Virtual Desktop looks like on new operating systems, on new products that might appear over the course of the year, the next year. I'd like to see what you do with those new tools, right? There's discussion here at the end of our audience about how indie developers have shown the big corporations how to do things again and again and again. And I think that is true of Virtual Desktop multiple times over the years. And we're going to get to see a lot of experimentation as more operating systems arrive in the next year. So it's going to be a crazy, crazy moment for us to cover. I think we're approaching the summer here. We've got basically 2 or 3 big software drops. We expect a big announcement from Google. We expect big announcements from Apple. I would expect Meta to drop some news before we enter summer as well. Then there will be a summer sort of rumor fest where we get to hear from all the rumor mongers about talking about what's going to be planned for the end of the year. And then right about July into August, I think, is when we will see a year like we've kind of hoped to see for a decade or plus, right? Like 2022 was supposed to be a big year, but things got pushed out of that year because of various reasons. And gosh, it looks like everything is going to fire in the back end of this year. So thank you for being on this journey with us. And no, I did not accept those AR terms and conditions yet. I will, however, because I need to have a WhatsApp call with Don Hopper that extends from my Vision Pro to his Quest headset. And the only way we're going to do it is with those Meta glasses, like somehow forming some part of that discussion. Like, we're going to start our conversation on our phones. We're going to extend them into headset. and I'm going to mirror my phone into my headset while he is going to be able to like hand off the call on WhatsApp to WhatsApp inside the headset. But that's what I need, Don. Or I need that from Don, and I need that for my team in order to produce things. And I'm going to have to agree to Meta's AI terms, but that means that I will not be taking photos for my personal life anymore with those glasses. I'm going to use it exclusively for the purpose I just described of trying to like just prove out what a phone call looks like from AR to VR and continuing that call. So anyways, that's the answer to your question. We'll see you in the future. Thank you to David for putting this show together. Thank you for all the hard work. My team, Henry Stockdale, did an incredible job, even though he was off last week, keeping our content. Yeah. What?
No, I'm just saying Henry's amazing because
yeah.
even when he's off, he's able to still produce work and liaise with freelancers. I just wanted to echo that Henry's doing incredible work covering the games industry here in VR, which is just the pace of indie innovation, some of the big stuff we're seeing. Yeah, it's incredible to see what Henry's kind of highlighting.
Yep. And so thank you to my incredible team out there for the incredible work they do. Just the biggest thing you can do to support us is become a member to show us that you support our work, that we're going in the right direction, and that will allow us to sort of keep going and get more people on this team so that we can sleep a little bit more. We'll see you in the future.
Thanks, everyone. And indeed, RIP Minecraft VR officially, but of course, not RIP to the mods that will let you still play the Java edition. So thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.